Assalamu alaikum. In this lecture, we are going to learn about punctuation. We all have heard about punctuation, and we have a fair idea of certain punctuation marks, but we often make lots of mistakes related to punctuation. So, in this lecture, I'll try to cover basic mistakes and the basic rules that we have to keep in mind when writing and reading, and what does different punctuation marks mean. I'll try to keep it simple so that you can have a fair idea and retain it. Let's begin. What is punctuation? Punctuation is used to create sense, clarity, and stress in your sentences. If you do not use punctuation marks in a sentence or in a structure of language, then it becomes pretty ambiguous. And lots of times there are different varieties of the questions of the sentences that keep us wondering what does it exactly mean. So punctuation marks help us clarify the meaning, make sense of the structure. We're gonna see some examples very soon which will clarify the importance of punctuation and can tell us that if we use punctuation or if we do not use punctuation, how that would matter in the writing. You use punctuation marks to structure and organize your writing. So when we're talking about writing, we use punctuation to structurize it and organize what we are writing. And when we are reading, the punctuation marks help us clarify the structure and help us make sense of it. And we can somehow make tone of the writing. When I'm speaking, I'm fluctuating my tone so that you can understand. Okay, similarly, in reading and writing, we take help of punctuation marks to stress or to sound low or sound high and try to emphasize something, maybe to make a series of actions. So we use different stress marks, punctuation marks, so that we clarify the purpose of writing. So we bring clarity and sense to what we are writing and what we are reading. All right, let's begin. These are some of the common punctuation marks. There are certain more, but these are very basic ones that we should at least have an idea so that we can use them, and whenever we are reading, we can make sense of them. If there could be certain punctuation marks from here, for example, comma, full stop, exclamation marks that we quite often use, maybe question marks sometimes, but then there could be certain other punctuation marks that we rarely use. I have seen very beginner writings very rarely using colon or semicolon, inverted commas, apostrophe, and daches and other things. So, but we should know that all the punctuation marks carry equal importance. So some are very frequently used. For example, every proper sentence would require you to use a full stop, but not every sentence would ask you to use a comma. So full stop may perhaps be the most common one. Similarly, in a paragraph or in a structure, you could hardly see one exclamation mark, one semicolon or colon, but a paragraph would have such a number of full stops. But that does not mean that other punctuation marks are of less importance. Every punctuation mark has its own importance and help us create sense in what we are writing and reading. And every punctuation mark has its own use and it is used for a different purpose. Okay, we will go in detail and discuss all the punctuation marks, the most common ones, and see where they are used, where they should not be used. But before that, I want you guys to read this paragraph for a minute. Maybe you can pause this video and read this paragraph and see, does it make any sense to you? All right, so let me try to read this paragraph. Perhaps you don't always need to use commas, periods, colons, etc. to make sense clear. When I am in a hurry, tired, cold, lazy, hungry, I sometimes leave a punctuation mark. Grammar is stupid. I can write without. Okay, so I can definitely read it, but I definitely don't understand, and it is quite ambiguous that when there is a sentence transition, what is it trying to say? Was I angry? Was I cold? And where did hurry came from? And there were a lot of other things that just mix up. Okay, so this is a pure paragraph, maybe written grammatically completely correct, all the words have certain meanings, but we don't make a sense of it. So now, if you see the same paragraph with punctuation marks, now you can stop this video and look at this paragraph and see if it makes any sense. All right, now let me read it. Perhaps you don't always need to use commas, periods, colons, etc. to make sentences clear. When I'm in hurry, tired, cold, lazy, or angry, I sometimes leave out punctuation marks. Grammar is stupid. I can write without it and don't need it. My uncle Harry once said. He was not very clear, and I never understood a word he wrote to me. I think I'll learn some punctuation, not too much, enough to write to Uncle Harry. He needs some help. Okay, so now see what the author or the writer of this paragraph wants to say. He makes it very clear how much punctuation marks do we need and the importance of punctuation marks. I hope for now you have a clear idea that, yeah, we actually need these punctuation marks to make our writing more structured, more organized, and if you want our writing to make some sense, we definitely need to use punctuation marks. All right, let's move on and learn about different punctuation marks and their uses. Okay, here we are. Let me just open it up. Here. Okay, so this is a document which talks about different punctuation marks and rules. I took it from an open source. You could find similar documents, similar examples from internet and from many books that you can use. Okay, so these are some basic punctuation rules that we're going to learn from this document. Okay, so let's read some examples first to emphasize my point that how much we really use and how much we need punctuation marks in our writing. So first example is this one is my favorite. Let's eat grandma. Or let's eat grandma. Okay, so the first sentence, that's clear that we are talking to grandma and we are asking her to join us in eating. Okay, but the second sentence is a little bit scary, and that means we are planning to eat grandma. Okay, so similarly, there's another example: women without her man is nothing. And if you wrongly use punctuation marks, women without her man is nothing. So we see there are two examples. All the words are same, used in similar orders and same sequence, but only differences of the use of punctuation marks. The first sentence, women without her man is nothing. So it means the women need a man, otherwise they're nothing. While the second sentence is emphasizing the importance of women and they saying without her, a man is nothing. So the sense completely opposite. In the first sentence, a woman needs a man, and in the second sentence, a man needs a woman. So we see the punctuation marks are literally very important to bring sense in the writing or to bring an accurate sense and make it clarify what we want to say and so on. All right. So the first punctuation mark that we are going to discuss is comma. We know commas, right? Okay, so this is a comma here. Okay, so we know the structure of a comma. Or here I can show you a little bit elaborate. Here, all right, first it's talking about a full stop. And then here is a question mark, exclamation mark, and there we have a comma here. And here are a few examples that are given. Okay, so there are lots of other things, but let's see, this is a comma. Okay, we know how to make this a structure and we call it often use it. Now we need to learn where exactly we use it in a sentence. Okay, now commas are used to indicate a separation of ideas or elements within the structure of a sentence. For more information on comma uses, okay, this is talking about a handout. Okay, so now he is now the author is talking about different uses on this side of the page here, that what are the uses of comma, and here he is giving us few examples. So the first use of comma is commas are used to separate three or more words, phrases, or clauses, like the sentence part in a series. We've already talked about phrases and clauses. Now we should concentrate that the use of comma. Okay, so we use comma in a sentence where we have to separate three or more ideas or more words. Because why three? But why not one or more? More than one. Okay, because when we have one word, we don't need a comma. Literally, we can just say that I like chips. Okay, but when we have two words, we can say I like chips and cold drink. Okay, but when we have three or more words, then between them, I need to use comma, and before the last word in the series, I would use an and. So the first example here, the entry includes chips, salsa, and beverage. Okay, so I can say I like chips, comma, salsa, and a beverage. Okay, so we see that how do we use commas? We use commas to separate a series or items in a series. Next use of a comma. Commas are used after an introductory dependent clause, a group of words before the subject of a sentence that do not form a complete sentence. I hope you all have a certain idea that what a dependent clause and what an independent clause is, but just to revise a little bit, dependent clauses are the clauses that do not make any sense when they are used independently or when they are written on their own. Okay, for example, here is an example in the bold, since we would be returning late anyway. Okay, so if I say this one sentence just and just skip out the later part, so it does not make any sense. Okay, so it definitely means that there's something else coming up. Okay, so that is the more independent part and the basic part that we're going to talk about. Okay, so this is the dependent clause. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is the dependent clause here. Okay, there is some error with that. So the clause in the bold is the dependent one and the other clause is independent one. Okay, I hope it's clear for now. So we use a comma after a dependent clause in the sentence. Okay, when we have to combine two clauses, one dependent and another independent, we use a comma between them. Okay, the third use is comma indicate that introductory words and phrases moved from the end of the sentence. Okay, so there could be adverbials, there could be different adverbs or different things that we use in extra part in the phrase to give certain more information about the sentence. Okay, these parts may be written in the end or if you're using them in the beginning. Okay, if I say everything looked different in the light of day. Okay, but if I use that phrase in the beginning of the sentence, in the light of the day, everything looked different. So here, to connect these sentences, these phrases, I would need a comma here. Okay. Next use of comma. Commas are used between independent clauses in a complete sentences, joined by coordinating conjunctions. In a lecture, when we were discussing different parts of speech, we talked about coordinating conjunctions, subcoordinating conjunctions, and so on. Okay, so we know that we have coordinating conjunctions. They are called fanboys. That means for and nor, but, or, yet, so. So before using these coordinating conjunctions, we need to put a comma to connect two sentences, okay, two phrases in a sentence. So here, before these coordinating conjunctions, like here is an example, we use a comma. Next, comma set of non-essential phrases or clauses or apostrophes. Okay, so certain times in our writing, when we put in some additional information, a part of the sentence, for example, I could just simply write, my cousin, and skip out this part, said it would be best if I skipped town for a while. Okay, so the main sentence idea is that my cousin told me that uh, I should skip the town for a while, or maybe something like that. Okay, but this, I have added this information in the bold, who recently joined the mafia. Okay, to tell more context of or the reliability of my cousin. Okay, so that is an extra information that I have put in the sentence. So this is a very usual practice that we do. Okay, so this information is an additional information in the sentence, or we also call it interrupting information or interrupting phrase. Okay, so when we are adding an interrupting phrase in a sentence, we need to use a comma before and after it, just to separate it from the main idea of the sentence. So we can write my cousin, comma, who recently joined the mafia, comma, and then rest of the sentence. I hope it's clear. There could be lots of other examples when we use this interrupting phrase. Okay, next is comma separate paired adjectives that describe a noun. You need a comma between adjectives that could go in any order, or they have to be commutative, could be separated by the word and. Do not use a comma between adjectives that need to be in a particular order. Okay, so here are a few examples. The first is they serve cheap, delicious milk. It's wrong because here we need a comma because these are two separate uh, adjectives, cheap and delicious. Here there was a point about the order of adjectives that we already have discussed when we were talking about adjectives in our word classes lecture. And that be okay, these two are opinionated adjectives, cheap and delicious. Okay, but then these both are the adjectives that's talking about the meat. Okay, so in this case, we need a comma between these two adjectives. Okay, so it is again the same thing, the way we were using the comma between a series of words. So let's say these adjectives are a series of a word, and between them we need a comma. However, here is a case where there are two adjectives, cheap and teco, right? But here we do not use a comma between. This could be one phrase here, okay, and this is an adjective that is used for indicating this thing. Tecometer is one word. So here we do not use and comma between them because we cannot reverse the order. We cannot write teco cheap meat. Okay, so in certain case, when there is a particular order that we have to follow for these adjectives, in that case, we do not use a comma between them. So this one in this case is right without the comma. I hope it's clear now. Okay, moving forward, now we're coming to quotation marks. Quotation marks are very straightforward punctuation marks that are not so much complicated, but still we'll just go through it. We use quotation marks at the beginning and the end of a quotation or a title of a short work. Okay, when we are quoting an exact words of some other person that he's saying, in referencing some citation, or maybe narration, when we are narrating that this author said something, okay, and we are choosing to write the exact words they spoke. So in that case, we would use quotation marks and put those exact words within the quotation marks. Or we also use quotation marks for writing that for quoting the title of some work. When citing the quotation and the punctuation rule changes, see paraphrasing and quotations. Okay, so there could be some complicated rules that would go for advanced academic writing and citation and referencing, but that is the not your point of concern right now. Let's see here. Here are different uses of quotation marks, and then we have some certain examples. Quotation marks enclose the exact words of a person. Okay, so this is what we just discussed, that in narration, we say that she said, comma, and then we put the exact words within the quotation marks. Okay, do not use quotation marks around a paraphrase or a summary. Okay, so this is a very important point to remember, and a very common mistake that we make is when we are changing the words that the person say. Though we are trying to retain the main idea that this person implied that, but we're not using the exact words that he said or he or she said, then in that case we would not use inverted commas, right? It is kind of a indirect narration in which we just mold the words to be appropriate for the context, but uh, we do not use inverted quotation marks in that case. Next is quotation marks set of the titles of smaller works within the larger works that can vary between different citation styles or double check your style guide for accuracy. Okay, we don't need to worry about different citation styles right now. We're just talking about common academic writing. So in that case, when we are talking about the titles or the names, or like for example, there's a name of a short story, I would write that in inverted commas. If there's a name of this song or chapter, or particular names that we want to highlight in the writing, we would put them inside the quotation marks. Okay, use periods and commas inside quotation marks. This is again a very common mistake and often a very common confusion, that if you're using a quotation marks, where should we put this full stop thing? We know where do we use full stop, right? We use full stop at the end of a sentence. The one use of full stop is that. Okay, so when there is a sentence written inside the quotation mark, a complete full sentence, so the rule is that it should have the full stop within the quotation marks. Okay, so first we should give the full stop, we should write the full stop, the point here, okay, and then we close the quotation marks. Okay, similarly here we have another example, full stop, then quotation marks. Never put a full stop outside the quotation marks. Okay, we need to complete the sentence and then we should close the quotation marks. Okay, place semicolons and colons outside the quotation marks. Okay, so here I recommend the works and the semicolon. It comes with thing. So we see that these colons and semicolons, we do not put them inside it, because these are, we are going to discuss about the uses of colons and semicolons. They're used to tell further about the previous thing, okay, and it's kind of elaboration. So this elaboration does not need to come and inside the quotation mark. Quotation mark would just talk about the main exact words. Okay, place question mark or exclamation points inside the quotation marks if they punctuate the quotation only. Okay, so these punctuation marks like question mark here or these things, if they are punctuating the inside of the thing, if that question is the exact words, then we would use them inside it, but we can use them outside when we want to say or the complete sentence begins before the quotation marks. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky here, but with practice, if you understand, for example, don't you think it's the time we started letting women be pirates too? So this is a complete question that was put forward by this captain. Okay, so we put the question mark inside, but if the question starts generally and then we are quoting some words, what did this mean by this? Okay, so when she said or he said, there was this statement, but my confusion is what was meant by what she said. So the question lies outside the context of what he or she said. Okay, so here we would put the question mark outside the quotation marks. Okay, so just remember these few rules, that whenever you are using quotation marks, okay, that we have to put the full stop inside the quotation marks, and we have to use question mark or exclamation depending on the context, whether it was put forward as a question or whether now we are making it as a question. Or similarly, if you're using colons or semicolons to elaborate the point, we need to use them outside the quotation marks. Okay, moving forward, now we have parentheses. Parentheses are these little small brackets. Okay, here we can see in the background watermark that these are the parentheses. Okay, we use them for different purposes. Okay, that are used within a sentence and tell us something related and but not so important. Okay, like we visited several European countries on a trip last year. Okay, so the sentence was clear. If I was not so much interested, I would say, okay, you visited several European countries. Several, it says it all. Okay, but in break it, if I write down the particular names of the countries, so those are not so essential to mention if there was off the topic. So certain things that are not so important but are related to what we're talking about, we put them or write them inside the parentheses. Okay, parentheses set off an additional additions or expressions that are not necessary to the sentence. Okay, they're not so important, otherwise the meaning is clear. We use them inside the parentheses marks. Okay, similarly, we have an other example. The rule we use is parentheses can enclose figures in a sentence. Okay, so here the numbers that we are mentioning, we can use them inside the parentheses, like number one, participation, and number two, this. So your grades will be based on these two, three, four things. All right, moving forward, there could be other uses of parentheses when we are talking about some additional information. Let's say, for example, when the group inside the parentheses forms a complete sentence, but it is inserted inside a larger sentence, no period is needed. Okay, so when there is an additional information that does not that is a part of the sentence, so there is no need to use an additional mark period inside the quotation, the parentheses. Okay, so there is other rule. When parentheses are used to enclose an independent sentence, the end punctuation belongs inside the parentheses. Okay, so we if we have, here is a small paragraph, we have three sentences. Okay, one sentence, one complete sentence, I to Monday. Okay, then there is this second sentence and then a third sentence. So these are three independent sentences. So if we have a different independent sentence which we are writing inside the parentheses, then it should have a full stop inside the parentheses, not like we put the parentheses and then a full stop. Rather, we use a full stop, then a parenthesis. Okay, so the use of parentheses is pretty simple. We just need to use them to put some extra expressions that are additional in the meaning. Okay, or for example, we enclose different figures or numbers inside the parentheses. And then we have to follow the rules that whether we use the period inside the parentheses or outside the parentheses, like here. Okay, moving forward, apostrophes. So the use of apostrophes is again very common and very pretty simple. We use them to show the possession. For example, we say Jenny's book or Sarah's writing. Okay, Sarah's remarks or something like that. Somebody's laptop. So here we put up apostrophe and then we use s to show someone's possession, that it's her book, it's his pen, or it's his idea, or something like that. Okay, so we use apostrophe before an s. Similarly, we have another use is for plural possessives. Okay, so for here we were using an apostrophe and then s. Okay, and then we were talking about the noun that we're talking the possession about. But this rule is a little bit trickier when we are using it for plural possessives. And this is the thing that we often make mistakes. For example, if I have to say my parents' car, so if I say if I put the possessive this mark apostrophe before the s, that means that one of my parents' car. Okay, but if I use s and then this apostrophe, okay, then I mean to talk about both my parents. Okay, so this is the rule that we need to remember when talking about plural possessives here. Okay, so whenever we're talking about plural possessives, we need to keep in mind that we need to use s and then apostrophe. Okay, so this rule would go for proper nouns and everything, that wherever we are talking about plurals, we need to use put s and then apostrophe. Next rule is do not use an apostrophe with possessive personal pronouns. Okay, we know this is again a very common mistake that we know. Uh, okay, that his, hers, yours. So here we do not put an apostrophe before s. Okay. Next is apostrophes are also used in contractions, two words which have been combined into one. So we know that when we are informally speaking, we use contractions of pronouns. For example, instead of saying I am, I would say I'm gonna. Okay. Or similarly, I have. Okay. So when we are writing them, for example, in a text or something, instead of writing I have, I would write I apostrophe and at ve. So these are very common contractions, and there are some other contractions that you might have heard of or you might use in your writing. But remember that we do not use these contracted writings in formal writing. We use them in informal writing. So these are certain uses of apostrophes. Moving forward, we have hyphens. Okay, we use hyphen for different various reasons. We connect up any compound words. For example, here we have compound numbers. For compound numbers, we are using the hyphen between them. Okay, 42 students. Okay, one use hyphen to use from 21 to 99, and with fractions uses the modifiers. Okay, so between the compound numbers you can use hyphen. Similarly for compound adjectives, well renowned composer. Okay, well liked composer. Okay, so for compound adjectives, compound numbers, between them we can use hyphens. We also use hyphens for prefixes and suffixes. For example, ex-mayor. Okay, she's my ex-friend. She is all-star. The self-image. Okay, non-European. It's non-Pakistani, non-Indian. Okay, non-American. Or similar prefixes, we use a hyphen before them. We also use hyphen for compound phrases. Okay, like here, 9-year-old boy, sister-in-law, up to date, soon to be. So all these structures we use a hyphen between them. Also, note how hyphens can change meaning and use them accordingly. Okay, a hot water bottle would mean what bottle for holding water, hot water. A hot water bottle without a hyphen would mean a bottle of water that is hot at the moment. Okay, so here in the second sentence, a hot water bottle would mean a hot is an adjective talking about a water bottle. Okay, but here when we are using hot hyphen water, okay, so that would mean this is one word that we're talking about, a bottle which is used for holding hot water. Okay, so this is very important use of hyphens here. We see how they can change the meaning and where we should use them and where we should not use them. Next is colons. Colons are pretty simple, yet at the same time very tricky. Colons are used, come after the independent clause, complete sentence, and before the word, phrase, sentence, quotation mark, or list they are introducing. Okay, so here are a few times certain uses of colons. We see they're used after the independent clauses, okay, and before the word, phrase, or sentence, quotation, or list they are introducing. So basically, the colons are used for additional information that we want to draw someone's attention to. Okay, for example, lately I have had only one thing on my mind, and one thing that is colons graduation. Okay, so lately I have had one thing on my mind is that is graduating from college. Okay, I can't wait to graduate, papers, grades, and finals. So it is not necessarily should be a word or a phrase or a complete sentence. It could be anything, but this is the main idea that we want to draw someone's attention to, and to clarify that we were talking about this thing. Okay, that I have had only one thing on my mind. That would mean that is graduation. that is graduating from college. That is the thing I'm talking about. So before that thing, we would use a colon. Next is rule is never use a colon after a verb that directly introduces a list. Okay, so the things on my mind are, and these it's not an ideal way. We use them like this. The things on my mind are the following. Okay, and these are papers, grades, and these are, if we have the verb, we just skip out this colon and we just write it a simple sentence. The things on our mind are this, this, and this. Okay, so we use colon when we have given a set complete sentence, then we are giving or providing the main idea. So in that case, we would use a colon. Okay, so just remember this thing, that if we have a direct verb here, okay, helping verb, and then we do not put them directly after that. Okay, moving on, we have dacious. Okay, these are very rarely used. Since we're running out of time, we'll just skip that. I'll share these handouts with you. You can access it. If there are any queries, we'll discuss in the live session. Then we have semicolons. This is very important and very confusing. Let's discuss these. Semicolons have different uses. They are used to separate clauses or phrases that are related and that receive equal emphasis. Right? You can go your whole life without using them, or you can impress your readers by using them correctly. So as I talked about earlier, that many beginner writers do not use these kind of punctuation marks, and then the writing is pretty fine sometimes. But if you use them, your writing would be more organized and more structured, and the reader would be a little bit impressed. Okay, so what is a semicolon? This line mark in the background is the semicolon, a full stop and a comma. Okay, in parallel, it's a semicolon. Semicolon uses joins two independent clauses, complete sentences that are closely related if no coordinating conjunction is used. Okay, so here between two independent clauses, we have used the semicolon without any coordinating conjunction. Okay, semicolon signal to a reader that the information in both sentences could be taken together. Okay, so that means that these two things are related and they would be always together. We're planning to go to get coffee, however, he had to cancel. Okay, so these things always go one in one and always go together. That's what we have to keep in mind when using semicolons. Semicolons help avoid confusion between items in lists where there are already commas. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky use of semicolons. Okay, so we use them, along with commas, but this is tricky because we use them as a set of this example in itself is a little bit complicated. So I'll provide you a simple example. Let's say uh, when we're talking about a list within a list. Okay, so for example, this is one list, this is an other list, and this is a third list. Okay, so these are basically three things. Maybe it is related to continental or area wise, so there's a list. So we see here that two countries are separated by a comma, and then there's a semicolon, then there is a comma, and then semicolon and a comma. Okay, so here the point is, for example, I have to say I like toffee, chocolate, Pepsi, 7 Up, and so pizza and pasta. Okay, so for example, different sets of things. So these are all the things that I like in general, but these are specific things of two categories. Okay, for example, toffee and chocolate. Okay, these are two categories of the same thing. So I would use a comma between them, and then I would use a semicolon and say Pepsi and Pepsi, comma 7 Up. Okay, and pizza and pasta, comma, maybe something like that. Okay, so when we're introducing a list within a list, so the within list we would use a comma, like smaller list. For the big list, okay, the overall idea, we would use a semicolon. Okay, I would add some additional materials for you in which I'll give few examples for that, and then I hope it would this use would be clear. Okay, that's it for punctuation marks for now. Okay, if you have any queries, we can discuss in the live session. Besides, there are many other punctuation marks that need some attention. Try to read those, and then we would be discussing the rest of them. I hope it helps you to improve your writing and make sense of the writing. Thank you so much.